So in this lecture, we're going to have a look at numbers and operators. Before we move into that, I wanted to just clear out some basic stuff for you. So the first thing I wanted to show you guys is comments. So when you write a hashtag and then you write something in front of it, this basically is a comment. So what is a comment? A comment is basically something that you could either use to explain a certain code, or you could use it to make the code more readable, or to prevent a certain execution. So when I say to prevent a certain execution, you already know that if I write print hello world and I try to execute this, you'll get an output. As you can see, hello world. But as soon as I add a hashtag in front, this gets commented out, and if I try to run this code, you see, nothing is going to happen. Alright? So that's what a comment is for. A comment is basically something that you can use to make the code more readable. Okay? So in our case, we want to learn about numbers. So I hope you understood comment, but there's one more thing, which is a multi-line comment. So if you want to write comments in multiple lines, you just have to write something, then again add a hashtag and then a second line. Okay. However, you can have an alternative, which is something that is not really a syntax for multi-line, but it is something that you can use. So there's something called as a multi-line string. So you'll see this when we learn about variables and strings, but a string can be defined by using this, which is 3 double inverted commas. So when you write this and then you write like this is also a comment. However, this is actually a string, but because there is no variable, so there is nothing holding this as a value, Python ignores it. Okay, so let me run this. So one more thing I wanted to show you is how to run a code without changing these values here. So as you can see, this is print hello world, and I showed you how you can change it from here. However, over here too, you can either hit Ctrl Shift and F10 or right click and run hello world 1. So whichever tab you're in, that tab will get shown here. So if I'm in hello world, right click and hello world over here. Alright, so here I'm going to do Ctrl Shift F10 and you can see hello world came up here. Similarly, in this, if I do Ctrl Shift F10, you can see nothing came up here. That is because this is a comment. However, if this comment had a variable in front of it, then this would have shown up down here.
Side recall.
There you go. So as you can see, it's showing us that this is a comment in more than one line. So this is because this variable was declared, that's why this got shown up here. If you do not declare this and you rub all of these out and then you run this, it will not show up. Alright, so I just wanted to show this to you because this is going to be important while you work with your code. Alright, so that was comment. Now let's look at numbers, which is the topic that we wanted to cover. So there are basically 3 numeric types in Python. So the very first type is the int or the integer, then comes the float, and then comes complex. So these are the 3 types of numbers that are available inside it. So let's see what all of them are. Alright, so simply put, if I take a variable x and this is a number, just 1 for example, this is basically an integer. If I say x is equal to, or y actually, because you already declared x, y is equal to 1.0, this is basically a float. Alright, and if I say z is equal to 1j, this is basically a complex type of number. So what do I mean? An integer is basically a whole number which can be either positive or negative. However, you cannot have a decimal point, and this number can be of unlimited length. It doesn't matter. Okay. Then comes your float. In float, there is this point, which is your decimal point. This is called a floating point number. So that's why we call it a float. This number can be again positive or negative, and it should contain one or more decimals. Then comes your complex. So when we talk about complex numbers are numbers that are written with J in it, where J is basically your imaginary part. So this is something that's quite extensively used while solving complex problems in mathematics, but this is what I wanted to show you. Now you'll try and wonder that how can we be sure that this is an integer, this is float, and this is a complex. So let's use something to try that out. So we're going to write print, alright, type for A, alright, sorry, X. Similarly, we'll write the same thing for Y as well as Z. Okay, so what this does, type, this type function basically lets you verify the type of value or the type of object that is there inside this variable. So we are trying to print the type for X, the type for Y, and the type for Z. So let's hit Control, Shift and F10, and as you can see, it's showing us for X class integer, for Y class is float, and for Z the class is complex. So this could guarantee you that these three variables along with the values provided in front of them is the integer type, the float type, and the complex type. You're done with understanding what are the different types of numbers. Now we're going to look at how you can convert a certain type. So you can also convert something like convert a number from integer to float. Okay, and to do that, all you got to do is write the number. Suppose we'll write A as a variable, and we'll say A is equal to float. Float of what? Of X, because X is basically an integer, and we're converting X from an integer type to a float type. And to convert it to float, we just write a variable, say what we want to convert it to, and write the value. So after this, if we print A and Control Shift F10, as you can see, 1, which was X, has now become 1.0. Similarly, you can convert float to integer. To convert float to integer, you'll just write a value integer, which is int, and then y inside it. Again, printing this for B, Control Shift F10. As you can see, B, which was given an integer type for y, and y, which was an actual float value, has now become an integer type. And finally, you can convert integer to complex. To convert integer to complex, again, same thing, you just write a variable and say this is equal to complex and which number you want to convert to complex. So in our case, you want to convert X to complex. So again, I'll write print. Let me just do one thing, I'll remove these values so you don't get confused. And we'll just print C, which is our complex type now. And Control Shift F10. And as you can see, the value of C is now 1 plus 0j, which is actually the complex of X. And X over here had the value 1. As you can see over here, X is integer with a value 1 in it. And C converted it. Alright, so that is how you convert a certain number. Now let's look at the operations that you can perform on it. So you can perform multiple operations on a certain number. So let me remove all of these codes in fact. And let's take two simple numbers. A is equal to 10, B is equal to 20. Alright, so let's print A and B just to have a look at what we actually have. A and print B. Okay, Control Shift F10. And as you can see, we have 10 and 20, which is the values for A and B. Now let's look at math operations with it. So some of the operations that you can perform are addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, modulus, exponential, and floor division. So I'm just going to show you a couple of them because I want to make sure that you guys practice as well. So let's see how you do this. So for addition, very simple, nothing too complex. All you got to do is write x plus y into a variable. Okay, so I can do one of the two. I can say x is equal to a plus b. Alright, once you're given x is equal to a plus b, and if I print x, Control Shift F10, as you can see the value over here is showing as 30. Then we have subtraction, which is the same thing, just I'll remove the positive sign, make it negative, and run it. And obviously 10 minus 20 equals to minus 10, and the value shown up over here. For multiplication, you have an asterisk, which gives us the value 200. For division, you have a simple division sign like this, Control Shift F10. As you can see, 0.5. For modulus, you have the percentage sign that you got to use, and modulus is the remainder that occurs. Okay, so that's modulus. Then you have exponential, which basically means a raised to b, and that would be 10 raised to 20. So running this, as you can see, 10 raised to 20. And then you have your floor division, which is this, Control Shift F10. Alright, so these are your final mathematical equations and operators that you can use. So I'm just going to write them down for you. So for addition, you will use plus. For subtraction, you will use minus. For multiplication, you will use asterisk. Division will be forward slash. Modulus will be percentage. Exponential will be double asterisk, and finally floor division will be double forward slash. Alright, so this was the simplest way to perform mathematical operations on any of your Python numbers and integers. Alright, so I want you to try this out. I want you to try assigning values to variables, changing their types from integer to float, float to integer, and so on. And at the same time, I want you to take two numbers and try all of these operations. Alright, so all you've got to do is assign a variable, right, and give the sign in between. So just a quick thing I want to show you that I just remembered is, if I directly write print with a bracket and just write a plus b, okay, and I run this, that will also give me the same thing. Alright, so this is best if you don't want to assign another variable and directly print it using the print function. Alright, so that is it for numbers and math function. In the next lecture, we're going to look at the common errors that could be possible in Python and how you solve these types of errors. Alright, so once again, I'll see you in the next lecture. Thank you.